Today on the 10-12 podcast, myself, Andy, and Jamie are recapping everything that happened in Week 11 in the Big 12, including Utah's athletic director's post-game comments and the Big 12's response, plus Big 12 women's basketball, where things stand through 1 week. And Ryan Gilbert of Go Powercat joins us to talk Big 12 championship game and Bowl or No Bowl.
Talk to your specialist about Botox Cosmetic, Anabotulinum Toxin A, because Botox Cosmetic Day is back on November 20th. For 1 day only, buy one $50 gift card, get one free, while supplies last. It gets better because it's not just 1 day of celebration, but the whole month of November. Refer a friend to Ali, and you'll both get $50 off a Botox Cosmetic treatment. Plus, if you register and get treated during November 1st to 30th, you have the chance to win $10,000. For prescribing information and box warning, visit BotoxCosmetic.com or call 877-351-0300. No purchase necessary for sweepstakes entry. Treatment must occur by 12/6. For full official rules, offer terms and conditions, and to join Ali, visit BotoxCosmeticDay.com.
Being a marketer's no sweat. You just have to manage dozens of channels, launch hundreds of campaigns, score thousands of leads, and okay, fine, it's a lot of sweat. Unless you have HubSpot's AI-powered marketing tools to help you do all that and more. Get started at HubSpot.com/marketers.
Welcome to the 10-12, the podcast that covers all 16 teams in the Big 12 Conference. We are the flagship show, the 10-12 Network. Find every show on the network at 1012network.com. And of course, we are partners with Sports Social, Europe's biggest sports podcast network. I'm your host, Phillip Slavin. Thank you for joining us on this Monday, or whenever you are listening to this particular Week 11 recap for the Big 12 Conference. Wherever you are listening, do us a favor, leave us a rating and a review. It really does help the show out. That we would prefer a 5-star rating and a positive review. That's more beneficial to us than, say, a 1-star rating and a negative review. If you have a reason you want to leave a negative review, could you instead just DM us on Twitter at 1012network or shoot me an email, 1012podcast@gmail.com, and be like, hey, bro, or whatever random non-specific nomenclature you'd like to use for me. Your show's terrible. Here is reasons why. And I'll either respond with a okay, or I'll say, hey, I appreciate the constructive criticism, and I'll do what I can to make some changes along with what you have suggested. So look, constructive criticism is always considered. Non-constructive criticism is ignored. Because I'm 40.
Or openly
ridiculed for multiple weeks and episodes on the show. If it's because you're mad.
You know, non-specific nomenclature would include, hey, idiot!
That's fine. It's whatever you want to, whatever you feel comfortable using. It's fine with me. You're not going to hurt my feelings. I have 3 small children. You're not going to hurt
I would say
my
you
feelings.
have kids.
Okay. You're not gonna.
Yeah, he gets called a doo-doo head at least once a week.
No. My the 4-year-old's favorite word is poop. We had to talk her out of. We got to talk her out of a poop party for her next birthday party. Like, they get to pick their themes. Okay, they pick their things. Like, my oldest is having a sushi birthday. We've done dinosaur sushi. She loves.
What kind of bougie
food? Sushi's her favorite food. I'm not kidding. Her favorite food is sushi. The 4-year-old's favorite food is cheeseburgers, and the 2-year-old eats whatever. She loves sushi. She asks for it all the time. She gets it like 4 times a year, because that shit's expensive. Even though I love it as well. But look, it's just my 5-year-old loves sushi. She does. I have to buy her like at least a full roll, sometimes a roll and a half, because she will eat all of it. I kid you not. Yeah. So she's having a sushi-themed birthday party, and we had to talk to the 4-year-old.
Now I need to know what kind of sushi, but we can wait until
I just buy her the basic like salmon roll or tuna roll. Like, she's not eating it's avocado. No, she eats raw fish rolled tuna. So she's either having a salmon or a tuna. Or usually I'll buy one of each and then give her half of each, and I'll eat the other half, and then I'll eat a whole roll as well because I'm a grown man who eats a lot of sushi. But yeah.
Just wait until she gets into poke bowls.
I'm going to get that. Oh, look. Dude, she's old enough and be like, we're going to be doing some umami shooters. Okay. I'm going to be taking her to eat all sorts of weird stuff because I'm like, yeah, that's what I'm talking about. Because my wife will try things, but like, I'm the adventurous eater. So I'm like, great. I know which child is going to be my adventurous eater with me. So we're going to do that. Yeah. So sushi party. But no.
I thought you were going to say which child is going to be my favorite.
We don't have favorites. Parents don't choose favorite children.
At
And
least
even
not
if I
officially.
did, I would never say who it is out loud in any sort of recorded form.
He's nodding enthusiastically right now, agreeing with me.
Where people would...
I will neither confirm nor deny what Jamie is saying.
Speaking of...
Wouldn't this be a crazy
famous,
first
favorite... Speaking of favorite kids, that voice you hear is Jamie Steyer-Johnson, JSJ, the voice of, I don't know, like 20 different sports teams.
We're down to one,
go.
baby.
Iowa State women's basketball. Strong start. Speaking of not favorite children, because you can only have one favorite. Andy Mitz.
I was to say I'm definitely the favorite punching bag for K-State fans.
Oh,
So.
yeah, well, you know, everyone you'd rather be hated than forgotten,
We all have our
right?
purpose.
You either die a hero or live long enough to
Exactly.
see yourself become the villain, and you'd rather be the villain. I don't know. Oh man, I could use so many ways to transition into, you know, who's not our favorite kid, become the villain. Like, there's so many different games I could transition to out of that. We do have a guest coming up. Ryan Gilbert of Go Powercast is going to join us for the back half of the show. We have got some games.
At this point, that's got to be like 5 minutes.
Probably.
Away.
I think we got 30 minutes. He'll be here in 30 minutes. And we get them in, and then they usually have to sit for like 5, 6, 7 minutes because we get...
I think it's like
not
15
that
minutes.
long.
They have to sit
Listen
waiting
to
for us to
whatever
get done.
nonsense I wrap up with.
All right. Off the top.
All right.
Off the top.
I'll
kick it
be the
off.
one
Just
I was to say.
do your soccer spiel.
Okay. Oh, well, okay. I wasn't ready to do it this early, but I said I was going to hijack the podcast because, look, Jamie called it early in the year, although I don't think she actually did. But after watching Drake play the Kansas soccer team, she did mention how good it looked like they were going to be this year. And we found out just how good because they are your Big 12 women's soccer champions after sweeping through seeds 1, 2, and 3 in the final 3 games of the tournament. So
yeah, I mean that's a well-earned victory there. And yeah, I don't know that I exactly called a shot, and especially
no, you didn't at all. But I wanted to give you credit for
especially
it.
at that point. I did not know a lick about soccer. Now, like I know maybe half a lick about soccer, but
I believe your exact words, because I went back to try to find them, was I don't know if they're going to win the Big 12, but they're going to be a dang good soccer team this year.
Yeah, they were, and
So.
that was in the regular season accurate, and then they took the tournament. So like, especially with like the style that they play, they're so built for the postseason. Like to be able to just kind of run people ragged. Like they're in terrific condition. They push. Like it's not really a whole lot of like super finesse or like super physical. They just are relentless, man. And so it totally does not surprise me to see them as the lower seeded team able to make it to the championship and end up winning it. So I'm excited for them. They were super, super fun to watch. I obviously wasn't able to follow as closely as I would in my wildest dreams have time to, but I'm really excited. I'm definitely going to be taking note of when they play next for this postseason because that'll certainly be something to watch.
And look, I mean, we're probably going to have at least 4 or 5 teams make it to the NCAA tournament from the Big 12. So looking to see how well they're represented with the way that these teams have been playing. You know, I wouldn't be shocked to see at least a couple Big 12 teams go extremely deep in this tournament. So looking forward to it.
Oh, also, side note to point out is that this is the first year for head coach Daly, and it's the first coach in the league to claim the conference title in their first year. So like crazy season for the Jayhawks there. I mean, that's pretty dang awesome.
Congrats to the Jayhawks. Awesome way to end their, I guess I'm going to say regular season, not regular season, just the season's still going. Congrats to them.
to finish
the Big 12
the Big 12
perhaps?
season.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
There we go. Okay.
Speaking of Big 12 seasons,
play,
now we get to get into the craziness of
BYU 22,
season.
Utah 21. BYU remains undefeated, the lone undefeated team in the Big 12, both overall and in the conference standings. And thank goodness that they did, because a loss by BYU would have been really bad for the Big 12 if you now are sitting at the potential of multiple lost teams in the Big 12 title game. If you're going to have two bids from the Big 12, and it's looking less likely now than it was just a couple weeks ago, you need a BYU to continue to win. It would be great if they could avoid an upset at any point. But the Big 12, from a credibility standpoint, as well as just being able to have an opportunity in the playoff for more than one team, needs BYU to keep winning. They did it by coming from behind at the end of the game, marching down the field, kicking a game-winning field goal that in the closing seconds. Now that drive had a very interesting moment. There was a fourth down all the way back at BYU's 9 when they first started that drive, in which Utah got a sack, and then the flag went flying, and Utah was called for holding, and then 3 plays later, BYU marched down the field and then ended up kicking the game-winning field goal in the closing seconds. After the game, Utah's athletic director Mark Harlan addressed the media, saying the game was, quote, stolen from them. He was upset with the holding call. Quote, I've been an athletic director for 12 years. This game was absolutely stolen from us. We were happy to be in the Big 12, but after this, we are not. I'm disgusted by the officiating crew tonight. Kyle Whittingham on the Utah postgame show, I wish it had come down to the play on the field. I always love when we talk about the play on the field when, getting
penalties happen on the field as well.
Things that happen on the field. It's just not just. But the Big 12 has reprimanded athletic director Harlan. They have fined Utah $40,000, which I believe Joe Wheat of our BYU show, the Hype Train podcast, noted that it's $10,000 for every down in the second half of the game. Look.
It's also infinitely times more than the number of points that Utah scored in the second half.
Every time I try to be the bigger person and start to like Utah or be pro Utah or anything about Utah since they joined this conference, someone from Utah, and this time it's not a fan, it's not one of the small minority of vocal a-holes on Twitter, it's the frickin' athletic director who comes out and says, quote, we were happy to be in the Big 12, but after this, we are not. I get that it's an emotional moment. I get that it's a rivalry game. What are you doing? You are a grown man who's made money to run an athletic department, and that's the comment you give?
A lot of money.
That's the comment you give after the loss? I get all the emotions flaring. You're a grown man. Act like it. Not like some angry fan on the message boards. I love that he thought he was going to have a phone call with Brett Yarmark and put him in his place, and the comments that came out from the conference were like,
the thing is like, oh, we were happy, now we're done. Okay, what's your alternative? When you get an apology wall, not just an apology, a wall of them, okay? Then you can complain, maybe, at that point, okay? And then also, I passed out with probably 5 minutes to go in the game. It's been a long week. You can imagine my surprise when I woke up and saw the final score. Like, figure it out. Do literally anything else out there. Like, talk to your coach, maybe, about what the hell they did in the second half or didn't do, which was apparently anything.
Yeah,
Try more.
It would still be bad, right, if he had made the comments if it wasn't a hold, but it was as clear of a hold at the very beginning of that play as you could ever possibly get. Like, I saw it when you barely even had it. I was just like, oh, that's going to be a hold. And then I didn't see the flag at first, so I thought they let it go. And then when they called it, it was like, okay, yeah, I know exactly what that flag is. Like, this is like, it was not a shock to anybody at all.
That's the thing is, it wasn't even a poor call. Like, it wasn't a notably bad call. It wasn't even a bad call.
Right. Like, I can understand people getting upset coaches in press conferences or even athletic directors in press conferences after a bad call or a extremely questionable call. And if you want to make that sort of comment, but to take it as far as he did about a call that was absolutely 100% correct and as blatant as it was, like, I'm sorry, but you coach that you cannot grab a guy and hold him for 3 seconds down the field as you're going out for, it probably didn't actually have an effect on whether Utah was going to get there and actually get the pressure or not. But that's one of the rules.
That's why you don't do it, because other portions of the play can be affected. And yeah, if you're going to go nuclear, like, you kind of reserve that for when it's super warranted. And I get it's a rivalry game, but like beyond that, there was absolutely nothing to warrant that level of just going ballistic and being so over the top. Like, you had in the WNBA finals, Cheryl Reeve went into the post-game press conference to say that shit was stolen from us. A direct quote, for the record. But she had a lot more of an argument, and she was about to own it. There, you had a call made correctly on the field after you choked away the game.
Right. This is not like a Mark Mangino dollar signs moment, like where that was still kind of over the line, but you can understand why he was that upset. This was absolutely the right call in a horrible situation after your team just completely crapped the bed in the entire second half. You don't get to make those sort of statements and not get any kind of blowback from everybody about it.
Truly baffling.
Yeah. Look, Hype Train Podcast is our BYU show. Utah Utes Football Digest is our Utah show. It's on YouTube only. Go and watch both. Listen both this week. Both are on YouTube. You can watch the videos from both. They'll both be up on YouTube. Get both sides of the reaction. That's what I would suggest you do. You can find links to both at 1012network.com. Kansas 45, Iowa State 36. Congratulations, Kansas Jayhawks. You didn't blow a fourth quarter lead. And there was a point there where you started worrying, and I tweeted it out, and I was like, if I'm a Kansas fan, Iowa State's just scored a back-to-back times. Are we about to go through what we've gone through time and time again? But nope. The Kansas defense did not allow Kansas to fumble away a fourth quarter lead for what feels like the 1 millionth time this season. Instead, we have to talk about the fact that Iowa State's playing their worst football of the season at the worst time of the year to do it after an idle week. You take an idle week, then you come out and barely beat UCF. They gave up a game-winning drive to Texas Tech, and then get pantsed by Kansas on the road. And now look, we have said all season that Iowa State's defense, the linebacking core, is beat up. We can continue to talk about the number of injuries that Iowa State has racking up. And I would argue they are the most beat up and injured team in the Big 12. I get it. Everyone has injuries. I think Iowa State is the most injured team in the Big 12. But we have gone from Iowa State feels like a team that should actually be in Arlington by the time we get to December to when we get to the end of this season, are we still going to be able to make Iowa State can't win 10 games jokes? Because the way this team is trending right now, that's where we're headed.
I mean, if you pay attention to people over on the Wide Right Nightlight Discord during the game while they were melting down, which understandably, with the way that first half went, like I completely understand people being down on their team the way it's playing, but like they made a point of the way this team is playing. Do they win another game this season? Which would be ridiculous to think about, that they start out 7-0 and then end 7-5. But when you're that beat up, and now Rocco Becht is he's having trouble seeing the field for some reason. Like there was way too many times where he overthrew a wide open guy or just completely missed, or, expected guys to go one way and they went another way. I don't know what it is. It feels like he is a much better quarterback than what he showed. And you definitely have to give Kansas some credit for the way that their defense played. That defensive line was absolutely in the backfield pretty much all game long, except for that first drive. And so, like, Kansas played really well. This is the kind of Kansas team that we expected to see at the beginning of the year. They're finally playing like it because the offense has finally figured stuff out. But this is also not at all what we were expecting after, Iowa State started the way that they did. I will at least kind of give them a little bit of a, hey, they were, they have been so beat up. They played a Texas Tech team coming off of their bye that week. Kansas, last week Texas Tech was coming off of a bye.
No,
this week Kansas was coming off of a bye.
The week before before they played Baylor.
No. I looked at it. I looked at it because Iowa State fans were very, very upset about having two different having 2 games in a row against a team coming off of a bye. It was Texas Tech and then Kansas. So unfortunate for them that they have to deal with teams that are literally probably as rested as you could possibly be at this time of year. But this is also a team, like we talk about how good John Haycock is. And, that defense just looks bad right now. I understand that your linebackers are having issues, but this defense just looks bad.
Linebackers, defensive line, like Iowa State's beat up. Absolutely beat up right now. And I'm not trying to use this as an excuse. It's just like that's part of why they are struggling so much, especially on defense in the way that they are. I mean, you gave up a game-winning drive to Texas Tech at home off of your idle week. I got it backwards. Iowa State had come off of a week off against Texas Tech, and they played the way they did.
That's what it was.
And then you go to Kansas, and look, I get that this final score does not indicate how much Iowa State was actually like blown out in this game. Iowa State made it interesting with some scores late, but in the end, it didn't matter. And so, like, I'm not going to play the Iowa State's not going to win another game the rest of the season, since we'll play Cincinnati at home, at Utah, and then of course Farmageddon. But like, the way this team has played the last 3 games against UCF, Texas Tech, and Kansas, like they are like, forget about Arlington. Can you get things turned around and just have a nice finish to the year?
Yeah, and to be fair, like I don't think they will go winless the rest of the season, but it's not crazy to talk about that possibility with the way that they have played. And I mean, you have a Cincinnati team that disappointed, in the game that they had against West Virginia, but is still, I think, a decent team this year. I mean, you still have some somewhat spicy games to play the rest of this year. So we'll see how well they're able to actually finish stuff out.
Look, great timing to have a volleyball match on Saturday. And, oh no, I was pretty occupied. So you don't get my otherwise really
insightful,
intelligent analysis. Sorry, guys. Wah, wah.
As for Kansas, Andy, do you want to throw your hot take down here? No, we'll save that for the back half. You can save it for the back half. Hot take.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile. With the price of just about everything going up during inflation, we thought we'd bring our prices down. So to help us, we brought in a reverse auctioneer, which is apparently a thing.
Mint Mobile Unlimited Premium Wireless. How to get 30, 30, bit to get 30, bit to get 20, 20, 20, bit to get 20, 20, bit to get 15, 15, 15, 15, just $15 a month? Sold!
Give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See detail.
Colorado 41, Texas Tech 27. The Red Raiders went up 13-0 in the first quarter, and then got outscored 41-14 the rest of the way. That just goes back to Iowa State is definitely struggling. If you lost to this Texas Tech team, that was their only win in the last 4 games. That was a Texas Tech team who seemed like they were gonna have a good season.
Done.
And then you come out of the gate against Colorado, you start strong, you have a rough second quarter, and then you come out in the second half, and it doesn't really get much better. You were up 20-17 about halfway through the third quarter, and then that was the game. That was it. You scored a touchdown late in the fourth with 2 minutes left to try and make it look better, but it's just. This was not a good performance by Texas Tech in this game after the first quarter, at all. Colorado's got things rolling. And full credit to Colorado here. I don't want to sit here and belabor the Texas Tech's point, but full credit to Colorado. They have this thing rolling. I like winning quietly Deion Sanders. Now, I also like Deion Sanders, who took a tortilla and autographed it after he'd been asked about that stuff this weekend. I think it's hilarious that Deion Sanders autographed a tortilla, and someone needs to get that thing and frame it and hang it in the football stadium because that is so funny. I just, like, Colorado is playing so well right now, especially on offense, but like the defense is, we have to give the defense credit for as good as it has been, considering our expectations for it coming into this season. Like it's playing well. It really is. And Colorado sits here in a spot where we'll talk about the conference championship game here in the back half of the show, but like, you got to give Colorado a lot of credit. Like, we have to give Colorado credit for as little as we expected of them this season. And as much as we argued with Colorado fans who said, no, things are going to be better this year. We were like, okay, sure. I was wrong. Like, this is a good Colorado team. They're not getting the attention, but that's because people got so burnt out on having to hear about Colorado when they sucked last year that, like, nobody wants to hear about Colorado now, except Fox keeps putting them on. Big Noon was in Lubbock for Colorado, Texas Tech. It's going to be in Boulder for Utah, Colorado. It was, what was it?
I believe this will be the third week in a row that Colorado's been featured on Big Noon Kickoff.
Were they at Colorado, Cincinnati?
That's about to be an early game, bruh.
Yes, they've been. This is going to be the third week in a row that they will be featuring Colorado at Big Noon Kickoff. It's kind of crazy.
I'm planning on being in Boulder next weekend. I would even give half a thought to it, except for the fact that that's 10 a.m. local time. There ain't no way I'm getting up at that time on a weekend.
Well, and that's just for the game itself, assuming that's when the game is being played. Instead, you got to think about it. Local time, like for when the show starts, that's going to be like 6 a.m.
I mean, that
maybe even earlier. It's crazy.
That would be my concern.
Look, you want to, whatever you're going to do to give the Big 12 attention. I don't care if it's Colorado. That's fine. That's fine. Give them the attention. It is the Big 12. It's pro Big 12 stuff. I'll take it from Fox, especially if we're not going to get it on ESPN. So bring it on. Bring it on. We'll talk more about Colorado coming up here in the back half of the show. West Virginia 31, Cincinnati 24. Cincinnati had 436 yards of offense to West Virginia's 248. They owned time of possession by nearly 10 minutes. But that's not what decides games. Turnovers killed Cincinnati. They lost the turnover battle 3-1. The Mountaineers scored 17 points off turnovers, including a pick six, a fumble that led to a field goal, and a scoop and score to put the game away late. Cincinnati, I laughed because Parker Fleming, our good friend Stats Award, tweeted something about how good Cincinnati's been this year, and the ceiling is raised because of the gameplay, and Brendan Sorsby being good, and then Sorsby immediately throws the pick six, and he just, like, I had liked the tweet, and Parker just goes, great. That's the response after I tweet that out. Of course, I tweet something nice about Cincinnati, and then they go and do that. This was very much a Cincinnati blew this game, absolutely made mistakes. And here's the thing I'll say for West Virginia. Whenever Garrett Green is healthy enough to return to the field, I don't know that I'm switching back quarterbacks. I think Nico needs to stay the starter moving forward. I think he gives West Virginia a little bit better of option. Again, there's not as much tape on him as Garrett Green. I just, at this point moving forward for West Virginia, I don't think I'm going back to Garrett Green. I don't. I think you stick with Nico moving forward for the rest of the season. If the coaches feel differently, cool, great, whatever. I don't think I would make the switch back to Garrett Green from Nico the rest of the way.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard with the way that West Virginia is playing right now to really change anything. Like, I realize it's been an up and down season, but you know, they've had some of their biggest moments where you kind of question where things are going with Green as the quarterback. And I realize it's not entirely his fault. There's been other, issues kind of going on at the same time. But as we've learned with this, like in college sports, momentum and, the vibes you have around your team and kind of just the way everybody buys in is a really big deal. And so switching that when you don't have to I find it hard to believe that they're going to do that. Now, granted, they might be ready to say, hey, if Nico has a bad first half in a game, then we'll go back to Garrett Green at that point. But you've at least got to give him the opportunity to ride it out with, as well as he has been playing.
Yeah, as for Cincinnati, we'll talk about them in the back half as well. We're gonna have a conversation about both teams that is going to include them absolutely. Sorry, I got lost in my notes. Arizona State 35, UCF 31. A great season for Arizona State continues. And UCF continues to just blow opportunities. That's this game. UCF goes on the road. Looks like the better team early. Built up a 17-7 lead, if I recall correctly. On the road. Arizona State is without
Cam Skattebo.
Yep. And then the weirdest collection of things happens in the second quarter of this game. So UCF's up 17-7. Yeah, I got it right. 17-7. Okay. They give up a touchdown. So 17-14. And then the UCF player, and I don't know who it is. I don't remember his name. I just saw the play. The kickoff goes into the end zone. It's on the ground. He's there with the ball for a while. He picks up the ball and goes, I think I'll go run now. In the most, what are you doing, head-scratching, boneheaded, what just happened play, and gets tackled at the 1.
Yeah, look, I thought the Kansas guy and against Kansas State, fielding the ball at the 1 before stepping out was going to be the biggest special teams gaffe we saw in the Big 12 this year. This is worse.
No.
He had it in the end zone, looked like he was going to kneel down, changed his mind when there's people at the 5 and decided to run it out. And almost got saved. He went out and then started falling backwards and almost got a safety out of that. It was, it was atrocious.
Which then leads to another touchdown for Arizona State.
Well, no, actually wasn't that the first touchdown. And then the second one was an interception.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was bad.
Somehow it went from UCF was up 17-7 to UCF was down 28-17 within 2 minutes. It just
yeah, it was.
I don't know. I don't. It was just the most. It's the most I have to imagine UCF fans, and I haven't listened to Sons UCF yet, are just why does this kind of stuff just keep happening to us? It's just this is UCF, who last year gave up what kind of lead to Baylor, and blew what kind of lead against Iowa State, and then does this in a game where they're up by 10. It just keeps happening. It just keeps happening. It is insane. I don't understand it.
I don't know if this is a Gus Malzahn thing or if this is a stepping up from the American thing. Because, let's be honest, it's happened to Cincinnati as well. Houston has been all over the place, up and down, in good and bad ways. It feels like the teams coming from the American have had their share of volatility kind of amplified. The question becomes, how do they get off of this and get to the point where they're actually performing well week in and week out and not having these weird things happen to them?
Yeah, I don't know. Last note here, Arizona State's going to be a really popular dark horse for the Big 12 title game next year.
They are.
They are. They're going to be a popular pick next year to be a dark horse team. TCU, a lot. Oklahoma State, a lot less. I'm not even with the score. It doesn't matter. Oklahoma State has been outscored 251-143 in Big 12 play this season. They're terrible. I didn't watch the second half because I couldn't afford it because I'm a poors. I sit here and make criticism of Oklahoma State, which means that I'm poor and I have no money and can't pay my bills. I'm going to criticize that comment because it was dumb. I'm not going to criticize what Gundy does as far as coaching decisions the rest of the season, even though he just keeps saying things that don't make any sense, like he thinks we're all dumb. I'm going to wait and see what he does in this offseason.
I was going to say, my only question coming out of this game is, can Gundy say enough dumb things to cause people to be upset enough with him for the school to do something? Not saying that.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Watching the men's basketball game today, there was a guy behind the two announcers on TV who had his phone that said fire, Dunn, and Nardo, that he would keep popping it down so that you could see it on screen. And then there were 3 students behind the basket with signs that said fire, Casey Dunn, like on paper, and school officials came and took the pages away from them. This has gotten to a point where this is untenable. It is bad. The fan base has completely and totally turned on the football program, and for very good reason. This is the worst situation Gundy has ever found himself in Oklahoma State during his time here. It is awful.
And I will say at least 80% of it is self-inflicted because of the comments that he's made.
No. It's all self-inflicted. It's all self-inflicted.
I was giving him at least a little bit of leeway by saying at least 80%.
Nope. It's his program. You've been here for 20 years. No one's fault but your own. We're going to ignore the rest of that. As for TCU, it's a bit of an indictment on their run game that they had 175 yards on the ground in this game. That's a season high for them against a defense that gives up 248 rushing yards a game. So bravo. That's good? Question mark? Also, Melissa, if you're listening to this, why did you never text me? I told you there was going to be at least one play where like 8 guys go to tackle a TCU player and can't do it. I know there was one. Like, I'm not kidding, I didn't watch the second half. There was no reason for me to do that. I watched an episode of Lincoln Lawyer with my wife because I would rather do that. Okay?
I mean,
no.
The worst part is that that's all the running yards that they got when they were up 24-0 at half.
Yeah. Okay. Oh. Women's hoops. We'll save men's hoops for later. I want another episode. But Big 12 women's hoops. Jamie. Feed me some highlights and some lowlights for the Big 12 so far this season, or a very early part of the season.
Yeah, I mean, the lowlights is like the bottom of the league. Like, things are looking kind of rough for the bottom of the Big 12, which is unfortunate for sure. Obviously, a whole lot of time and not a ton of competition faced quite yet, but there are some very serious concerns about the teams picked in like the bottom half of the conference, probably. And we will just have to see how that fleshes out. Positives.
That would be just to clarify. That would be Arizona State, Houston. Those
Arizona State, defenders. Houston, Oklahoma State's got some issues. Arizona has some pretty major issues. Colorado, Cincinnati. I mean, we'll see. But there's definitely some rough things happening there at the bottom of the conference. But for the top of the conference, especially for a team that's kind of fringe on the conversation of top of the conference, West Virginia, I am very excited to see them play some better competition, hopefully before too awful long. Actually, I forgot. They don't have a great non-conference schedule. But they do have a freshman that I had as kind of my dark horse candidate for freshman of the year in Jordan Thomas. She came in out of Texas, has a lot of experience, was in the top 100. She's 6'3", she's got size to her, and her highlights, the film that I watched, like very, very, very limited film that I watched in the offseason, looked solid. And then the other day, I watched them play a little bit, and she definitely looks like she has some promise. Like, hasn't played super extended minutes in their first 2 games, but she's shooting really well from the floor. She's only missed a couple shots, made her lone field goal attempt in game 1, and then went like 6 for 8 or something in game 2. And so for them to have her, as well as JUCO transfer Staley Rivera coming in, having a little bit of size inside is definitely going to raise their ceiling quite a bit. It remains to be seen how she does in, like I said, like better competition, but even having her on the roster is a huge boost from last year. Beyond that, low light, Heyoka Lee's already missed a game, man. So it's sad. I'm on the record many times that she is by far my favorite player in the Big 12 that isn't in Cardinal and Gold. I'm obsessed with her, and it like makes me sad that we probably have seen the best that we will see. And now it's just a matter of limiting her minutes enough to keep her healthy enough to make it to the end of the year. But man, they got in a couple of those transfers and they have been producing at a high level. Tamara Poindexter and Kennedy Taylor both did some really good work in game 2 without Yoki out there. So that certainly helps a whole lot. And then my Cyclones, 3-0 to start the year, played 3 games week 1 instead of 1 like last year before going to Drake and getting a wake-up call. So a little bit of a different approach. And Addie Brown is doing Addie Brown things that for some reason most of the country doesn't know about, but she looks incredible. Emily Ryan recorded her 800th assist today, Sunday, and just passed into 3rd all-time in conference history, has a really, really good shot at becoming the all-time assist leader in Big 12 history this year, is on an absolute tear. 13 assists per 40 minutes to start the season with 1 turnover per 40 minutes. So my girls are looking pretty good.
Jamie, anybody surprised you? Look, we're a week into this, so there's limited data as far as number of games and quality of competition. But is there anybody who surprised you, positive or negative, just so far? It's okay if the answer is no.
Not really. Colorado is struggling a little bit more than I anticipated, and part of that is that Frida Foreman is out. But beyond that, I think that she is such like an anchor for them that it's really impacted them in a massive way. So they need her to get healthy, and they need her to get healthy fast. They are certainly struggling in some fairly concerning ways early in the season. Lost to Boise State today on the road, and so certainly need her to get healthy. Beyond that, Arizona, their struggles that I saw in the non-conference, they still don't look terrific. Won by 11 against UC San Diego today. So for the talent they have, probably should be producing better. So a couple of surprises there, just to kind of the negative side. A positive, Baylor, game 1 ran basically everything through Dariana Littlepage Bugs, which is massive for them. It's what they should do, but they haven't really done it the past couple years, so that looks really good for them. We're recording, it's 8:48. In 12 minutes, they're going to be playing Oregon, so I'm about to flip that on. Will be interesting to see a very odd roster for Oregon, but it'll provide them something of a challenge. So that should tell us a little bit more there. But early indications for Baylor are really positive for kind of the scheme that they look to be running.
Jamie, go enjoy that Baylor game. As always, it's a pleasure.
Thank
we love
you.
it. I know you're off next week, but we have you back here in a couple weeks. So,
and in the meantime, yet another Big 12 preview guest spot did just drop today, Sunday, and it was like an hour and a half of me yapping. So you can go find that on my Twitter. It's Beyond the Arc with Brandon Silver. It's also anywhere.
Ooh, very nice, very nice. Jamie, as always, appreciate it. Go have some fun. Enjoy the Baylor game.
Thank you.
You all should enjoy going to charliehustle.com, checking out the new Arrival section, because there is some absolutely fantastic stuff for Big 12 fans. Some new sweaters for Kansas State, Iowa State fans. They've got some for you. They've got an Aoka Lee and Audi Crooks tees. And for you Iowa State and Kansas State fans, they've got some new Kansas basketball gear available. Some very, very good stuff. There's a Fog shirt that I like very much. Very much think it's a pretty dang neat shirt. Those are just some of the stuff that you're going to find at charliehustle.com, because they have every single Big 12 team covered with fantastic gear that is incredibly comfortable. So you need to go to charliehustle.com. Use our promo code 101215 TEN1215 and get 15% off all non-sale items. If it's on sale, just throw it in the cart. You're good to go. If it's not, use that promo code 101215, whether it's for you, for friends and family, for the holiday season. It is November. Like, if you're going to get stuff ordered, you ought to start doing it quick, okay? You want to make sure things arrive in time for Christmas, that you have time to wrap them and shove them under the tree. You don't want to forget somebody or something. So go to charliehustle.com, save with that promo code 101215, 15% off all non-sale items. Charlie Hustle, vintage made fresh.
I will have to say, for a slate of quote unquote ugly Christmas sweater style sweaters, they're not that ugly. They actually look really good.
What uglies? The sweaters they put out?
Yeah. So I mean, they definitely give me the, trying to be ugly Christmas sweater vibe, but they don't have a ton of like stuff all over them. They just look really clean and good, but they definitely give you that thought of like, hey, this is trying to be an ugly sweater, but they just can't make it ugly.
What? This is not ugly? Those are just classic vintage.
I know, that's what I'm saying. Is like it feels like it wants to be one of those ugly Christmas sweaters, but it just looks too good because Charlie Hustle can't make stuff that doesn't look good.
All right, you can tell Andy what you think about the sweaters at AndyMitz12 on Twitter, X at AndyMitz12, Rock Chalk Podcast. Feel free to check all that
Look,
out.
I'm sorry. I had a really long week with tons of Kansas sports stuff going on in the KC area, so I guess I'm just not hitting on all cylinders tonight. Of course,
it's okay.
Certain people might say I never hit on all cylinders, but
I can hear Scott literally yelling as he's listening, going, "Me!" right now. Joining us now for the second half of the show, he is my doppelganger nemesis.
Feel your max with Brooks Running and the all-new Ghost Max 2. They're the shoes you deserve, designed to streamline your stride and help protect your body. Treat yourself to feel-good landings on an ultra-high stack of super comfy nitrogen-infused cushion that takes the edge off every step, every day. The Brooks Ghost Max 2. Technically, they're a form of self-care. Brooks, let's run there. Head to brooksrunning.com to learn more.
Which is a very old joke for people who I remember. He is Ryan Gilbert of Go Powercat, formerly of, he used to host a Big 12 podcast that was also called the 10-12 and was just, I loved it. I love it. Ryan, man, it has been too long, my friend. Welcome back to the show.
Yeah, well, the 10, it was 10 of 12, and the 10 was
10
actually
of 12.
1-0, not spelt out. So there was little subtle differences there, but obviously I go way back with both of you, honestly. So I appreciate you guys having me on.
Absolutely. It's a pleasure to have you. Like I said, it has been way too long since we got you on the show, and I appreciate Tim reminding me that you are there and hooking us back up. Of course, everybody go Powercat. We have, of course, Bosco Boys is our Kansas State show, but good. You guys do incredible work at Go Powercat. You and Tim and the whole team do a great job there. So always thrilled to have you on and have an opportunity to plug the work that you guys do. We got a couple topics for today for the back half of the show. We're going to start off with a very simple one because we have to look at the conference and say, I feel comfortable with what's left on the schedule saying that BYU is going to be one of the two teams in Arlington come December. And I know we don't like to do schedule watches. Kansas at home, although the Kansas is playing better, at Arizona State, and then Houston. All these teams far better than they looked, or at least two of these teams far better than they looked coming to the end of the season. And I do think Kansas kind of turned things around. So it's not an easy end to the season for them. And I still think that Arizona State road game, second to last week of the regular season, is a trap game. But I feel comfortable, and I'm curious if you all do with me, in saying BYU is going to be one of the two teams in Arlington come December.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to have to lose, honestly, at this point, I think 3 in order to not make it. Like, they would have to lose out, I think, to not make it.
Lose 2 and have weird. Look, the tiebreaker stuff could get weird if they lose 2, but like they'd have to lose at least 2 of the last 3 to not be there. And I just don't.
Right. They'd have to lose. They'd have to lose 2, and Iowa State would have to win out, I believe, is the way it would have to work. In order for them to not make it, just with the way everything is set up. So, but yeah, I think I could see BYU losing 1 or 2 of those games, honestly, just like you said, with the way that this schedule is shaping up, a lot more difficult back at half of the schedule than we thought it was going to be. Of course, we also didn't think coming into the year that BYU was going to be in this position anyway. So, this has been an absolutely crazy Big 12. I'm not going to rule anything out at this point just because of how ridiculous it is. I believe it was the Big 12 conference themselves that put out the graphic that said that, was that going into the games on Saturday, that 14 of the 16 teams were still technically in contention to go to Arlington. Absolutely ridiculous stat to talk about that right now, but
it's just the biggest middle finger. To
Oklahoma, to Oklahoma State and Utah. I thought that was absolutely hilarious.
Arizona at 1-5 is technically not out of it, but we're gonna go ahead. Like, oh, what a graphic to make. Oh,
but I mean, kind of to that point though, like, this is a Big 12 that if you say there's no way that something happens, 95% it is probably going to happen or come so close to it that you're crapping your pants. Like that's how crazy this conference has been this year. And so while I won't say that BYU can't miss out on it, it is extremely difficult. Like so many different things have to happen. It's like the whole, the one meme from Avengers, the one way that they won't go to the Big 12 championship. I agree. It's hard to imagine that they're not going to get there. I have no clue, though, at this point, who I think they're going to face, because I've said that it's going to be like 4 different teams, and I could make a case for all of them.
We'll get to that topic in a minute. Ryan, thoughts on BYU?
Yeah, I kind of, I thought that Saturday's game against Utah was really that opportunity. I wouldn't say opportunity, but the time for BYU to really slip up and lose was out there on Saturday, and they pull away with a victory somehow, some way. And so, might they slip one? Maybe, but it's very, very, very hard to see the Cougars not in that championship game. So as for the other team, don't ask me. It's wild right now in the Big 12. I think easiest, obviously, is Colorado, and I think Colorado's playing as good as anybody in the league right now. K-State was rather fortunate to play Colorado when it did. I don't know if Colorado was necessarily clicking on its cylinders like it is now. And again, I think Colorado's, most susceptible game was against Texas Tech on Saturday, and that final score is maybe a little inflated, but they got out of there with a win. And so, BYU and Colorado, I know that's chalk, but if they can just handle their business, they're in.
BYU and Colorado playing a conference championship game in Arlington, Texas. Yep, that sounds like modern college football. And look, we went through BYU's final 3. Colorado has Utah at home. Fox is going to be there. It's 11 a.m. on Fox. We'll talk about that game here in a bit. Road game at Kansas, and a home game against one of the worst teams in college football in Oklahoma State. Like, I'm not saying Colorado can't slip up, but I hate the term control your destiny, but BYU and Colorado right now do, because of what has happened to Iowa State the last 2 weeks, because of what happened with Kansas State to Houston. BYU and Colorado control their destiny, and everybody else needs help. Like, they need Colorado to slip up and lose. Because if those 2 teams don't, that's it. I mean, that's it. And BYU, again, has to lose twice, but they own the tiebreaker over Kansas State. They didn't play Iowa State. They've got Arizona State on the road, so that if Arizona State continues to win, that would eliminate them or could give them an opportunity. I know West Virginia is 4-2. I'm still not gonna. It's one of those things like, well, technically you're not out of it. I'm not gonna do that. I'm not gonna play that game. I'm not gonna give false hopes to West Virginia fans. They got Baylor, UCF, and at Texas Tech. West Virginia could win out. They still need help.
Right. Even if they do win out, it's a very, very long shot for them to still be in contention after 2 weeks from now.
Yeah. And then you get Kansas State and Iowa State still have to play at the end of the regular season. So they would have to win out and get there and hope that things happen that help them out. Like, it's just, it is BYU versus, and I get it, shoulder shrug, because we just don't know at this point. Colorado sits in the driver's seat. Iowa State and Kansas State are not out of it because Iowa State's 2 losses. They're not against BYU or Colorado, so they don't have to worry about losing those tiebreakers. Kansas State has the win over Colorado, so if Colorado were to trip up and Kansas State were to move to win out, they would be in a good spot. But like I said, everybody needs Colorado to lose. Everybody not named Colorado or BYU at this point, especially if you're Iowa State, Kansas State, Arizona State, you're cheering for anybody that plays Colorado the next 3 weeks to beat them, to give you a shot.
It's going to be weird when Kansas State fans and Iowa State fans are the biggest Kansas cheerleaders the next 2 weeks.
It's the gif of the woman, and she's like, oh, no. Well, maybe. No. Like, it's just, or it's the Larry David gif of him just being like,
But it wasn't just it's not just the next 2 weeks, right? K-State fans were rooting for KU. Not that it mattered a ton, but seeing Iowa State lose was good for Wildcat fans as well.
Yeah. Hey, look, there's nothing like winning the off week, right? It's not like winning the idle week. Has anyone else noted an insanely large number of like, we lost the idle week memes from people on Twitter this year, or is that just me? Like, it's an inordinate amount. I don't know. It's real weird. Okay.
To be honest, the Big 12 has been more like a winning the off week every week because crazy stuff is happening to everyone else.
You keep saying it that that's not just a normal Tuesday in this conference.
No, that's fair.
Okay? That's the Big 12. All right. Congratulations to everybody who is thus far bowl eligible. Obviously, BYU at 9-0, Colorado, Iowa State, Kansas State, Arizona State. TCU reached bowl eligibility this weekend with the win over Oklahoma State. Texas Tech's got 6 wins. That's it. That's the list. So we're going to play a little old-fashioned game of bowl or no bowl and try to predict who will and won't reach bowl eligibility based off what they have left in front of them. Let's start with the 5 and 4 teams, the teams who need just one more win to get there. That's West Virginia, Cincinnati, and Baylor are all at 4 and 5. So let's start with West Virginia. The Mountaineers, like I said, need one more win. They play Baylor at home, then UCF at home, and then a road game at Texas Tech to finish the season. I mean, we can lump Baylor in here as well because Baylor and West Virginia play on Saturday. One of them is going to get a 6th win and go to bowl eligibility. For the team that doesn't, Baylor's got at West Virginia, at Houston, and Kansas in the season. Looking at West Virginia and Baylor, whoever loses the game on Saturday, do you think the other one still finds a way to get to the 6th win and get to a bowl game? Ryan.
Yeah. I mean, especially not that the bottom of the Big 12 is bad, but to be one win away from how valuable, those extra practices are in bowl season and stuff. Yeah, I mean, I actually kind of my hot take on Go Power Cat. We did an article of the top 5, how the top 5 standings would finish out. Everybody had their own predictions, and mine was West Virginia, 2 losses. So come at me, I get it. That's a hot take, but I wanted to stick out just a little bit, right? But Baylor to pick up a win, in those final 2 weeks, I think is certainly attainable for them as well. So, but I mean, who knows? KU's obviously playing great, and then Houston, firsthand, I saw what the Cougars are capable of with Willie Fritz as head coach. I mean, he's got those guys bought in.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to imagine that they're not going to get one. I will say that Baylor probably has the tougher road because even though they do have Kansas and Houston as their final 2 games, like Houston is a team that's been very up and down and has shown, the ability to get some upsets. And I mean, we said it earlier, Kansas is playing their best ball of the entire season at this point. So, Kansas is a very talented team that very well could come in at the end of the year and win that game on the road. So Baylor probably needs this one more to make sure that they go bowling, but you have to like their chances to get at least one of the 2 against Houston or Kansas.
Yeah, West Virginia's got the better spot because it's home, away. Baylor's road, home. I agree. I feel like they both should get to that 6th win, which will, of course, as we've said on the show, like Neil Brown, Dave Aranda, get to 6 wins. They're back next season. The other 5 and 4 team, though, is very interesting. Cincinnati dropping that home game to West Virginia on Saturday puts them in a very precarious spot. Yes, they're 5 and 4 and they have 3 games left. Their 3 games are at Iowa State, at Kansas State, and TCU. Now, look, Iowa State does not look like the team they were in October after what we've seen from them the last 3 games, eking past UCF and then losing to Texas Tech and getting blown out by Kansas. But Cincinnati having to go to Iowa State, go to Kansas State, and end the season at home against TCU, they're in a really tough spot. For a team that looked like they'd kind of figured things out this year and got things going, the fact that they were, 5 and 2, and now could potentially finish the season on a 5-game losing streak, if I had to say one way or the other, I don't know that they're going to pull this off.
Yeah, they're in a lot of danger of being in a similar situation to last year where, they needed something at the end of the year to feel good going into the end of the season. And then Kansas came in the final game of the season and just wiped the floor with them. They are going to probably need that game against TCU. But part of the problem here too is that you look at their losses, all 4 of their losses have been fairly close. Like the game against Colorado, they were at Colorado, and that one was, I think, closer than the final score indicated. This game against West Virginia, there were definitely times where it looked like they were outplaying West Virginia. They just couldn't get out of their own way, and they still were able to make it just a single score. So like, this is a Cincinnati team that is by far playing much better than they did last year. The problem is that, yeah, they've got a game, at Iowa State. That is a worrisome game, even though if you were paying any attention to Iowa State fans in the second half of that game against Kansas, they are convinced that Cincinnati is going to just beat the crap out of them this week. That has probably changed in the time since then. But, I mean, I think they have a shot against Iowa State with some of the issues that they had. But to finish up with two really good teams and then having to face a TCU team that probably won't need this game for anything, but isn't going to just roll over for them. I think that they definitely have some worries.
Yeah, it's going to be tough, man. If it all comes down to that TCU game, that would mean that Cincinnati's on a 4-game streak. And so in a vacuum, I think the Bearcats are more than capable of winning that game, especially at home. But if you're losers of 4 in a row, that, who knows if the team's checked out at that point, especially with today's day and age of transfer portal and all that. And so if the Bearcats had lost, 5 games in September and October and they get hot late, I would love them to maybe win that last game. But if you're on a losing streak, man, the confidence of that team would be down. But K-State and Iowa State need wins in the worst of ways. Playing at home, it's tough to see either one of those teams slip up. So very well could come down to that season finale. And if they're on a losing streak, it's going to be tough.
Yeah, I wholeheartedly agree. Did not do themselves any favors with the way they played against West Virginia on Saturday. Okay. There are we got 3 teams at 4 wins. Houston, UCF, and Utah. Houston's 4-5, UCF's 4-6, and Utah is also 4-5. It is tough to have to win 2 of your final games. These are very difficult situations for those 3 teams to be in. Houston has at Arizona, home for Baylor, and at BYU left. UCF has at West Virginia and Utah. So UCF's got to go 2-0 to end the season. And Utah has to win 2 of 3 at Colorado, home against Iowa State, and at UCF. I'll just say this. No to Utah, no to UCF. Houston's the only one that interests me here. Winning, look, they got to go to Arizona, and Arizona is bad. This is a bad Arizona team. If Houston gets that win at Arizona, and they very much could, it's not crazy to think they could beat Baylor the next week. Or, I'm not going to pick them to upset BYU, but asking Houston to go to Arizona and win and then beat Baylor at home, the way Houston has been playing, it's not crazy, folks. It's not a crazy thing to think could possibly happen here for the Cougars to find a way somehow after a 1-4 start to go bowling in year 1 for Willie Fritz.
This year, Santa's bringing the power of Energizer into his workshop.
Whoa, the Energizer Bunny's got so much power.
Wait, he's powered up all the toys. I think that means we're done for the year.
I love this bunny.
He's the hardest working helper the North Pole has ever seen. And he wants all your gifts to have the power of the #1 longest lasting AA battery. So this holiday season, stock up on Santa's and the elves' favorite battery, Energizer Ultimate Lithium.
I mean, the BYU game to end the season could be interesting. And, we don't know if BYU is undefeated going into that game, how urgent is it? Now, I get it. In the CFP, you want to win as many games as you can, right, to get the best seed. That being said, if things shape up where it's looking like it's not going to matter much if you win one or lose one, before the Big 12 championship, man, I mean, hey, who knows, man? So I think Houston, of these 3 teams that have 4 wins, I would have to go with the Cougars just because, again, it's kind of like we talked about with Cincinnati. It's the opposite. They're peaking at the right time rather than descending.
Well, right. The other thing to keep in mind, too, is that if BYU is undefeated going into that final game, there's a decent chance that they might not take that one as seriously as they need to. And Houston is a team that is talented enough that could jump up and get them, especially with Zeon Chris at quarterback. They have looked like a completely different team when he has been playing and playing well.
Yeah.
With the exception of that blip against Kansas, when Kansas was coming off of a bye, like Chris has looked very good and has turned them into a respectable team. And I think the real question is just going to be, one, is he able to stay on the field? Because there's been some questions about him getting banged up already. But then two, is he going to be able to continue to perform at the level that he has with, he's a young quarterback in the Big 12. A lot of times that, gets more difficult the more games that they have in terms of, like they see that tape on you. They see that film. It's really difficult, I think, to continue, especially kind of midway through your first season as a Big 12 starter. That's where Chris is going to be in these last, 2 games. As for the other two, like I wouldn't be shocked if that game between UCF and Utah, neither team is going to be fighting for bowl eligibility at that point. Like I could see both of them losing out to that game, and then it doesn't matter because whoever wins that game is only going to have 5 wins.
I say this completely tongue in cheek, and I'm really, really sorry to UCF fans, but the funniest thing that could happen to UCF is to go on the road and beat West Virginia and lose the finale to a Utah team who's already been eliminated from bowl eligibility. Like that would just, if you want to crush their souls, you could that way. Okay. Oklahoma State, obviously 3-7. The bowl streak is over. The winning season streak is over. Kansas and Arizona both at 3-6. The primary reason that we're playing bowl or no bowl is because my good friend Andy Mitz has a hot take.
I bet
to discuss.
I bet everybody can guess what it is, but I mean,
can y'all guess what Andy's hot take for the end of the show is? When Kansas's final 3 games that they would have to win out to get to a bowl game are at BYU, home versus Colorado, and at Baylor.
I mean, I don't think anyone has to guess anymore. I mean, but look, like I've said, and like multiple people have pointed out, this is a Kansas team that right now is playing the way we expected. They played really close against Kansas State. Coming into the game against Iowa State, it was the broadcaster that said, they are a 2-6 team that had a positive 42-point scoring margin on the season. A ridiculous stat. The fact that they had scored 42 more points than their opponents over the course of the season and yet only won 2 out of 8 games. This is a Kansas team that can score when they're not shooting themselves in the foot. This is a Kansas defense that can do quite a bit to limit what the other team is doing. BYU just played an awful game against Utah. And while I don't think that this is going to be like, there was definitely rivalry considerations there. The Kansas defense has been better than Utah's defense for a good portion of the season. And this offense from Kansas is a lot better. So yes, it is going to be a home game for BYU. But this is a Kansas team that has a level of confidence that I haven't seen all year long. And it's not like they've been without confidence in other ones. And the game against Colorado is going to be senior day for Devin Neal, the all-time leading rusher in Kansas Jayhawk history now. It's going to be a game they're going to be up for, they're going to be ready for. Kansas has an opportunity to be an absolute spoiler in the Big 12 and get everybody else back into this race by beating both BYU and Colorado. I think that they can do it. Now, granted, the odds are still against them, but I've been correct on predictions with much longer odds than this before. I do think that this is a Kansas team that is playing well enough to be able to do it. So it would, though, be absolutely the most, Kansas football in the last 15 years thing for them to beat those 2 teams and then lose on the road to Baylor at the end of the year.
Yeah, you mentioned just barely losing to K-State, right? Like the Wildcats were very fortunate to beat KU in that game. And so KU's playing, I wouldn't say as good as anybody, but they might be playing as good as Colorado. Like I said, they might be playing as best as anyone in the conference. And that's going to be, that's going to be shown, that's going to be seen over the next 2 weeks. So, Andy, you're not crazy. I would err on the side of caution that, either BYU or Colorado can get it done. But, and that's just because I think Colorado, like I said, is playing really good. I was out in Provo and K-State played under the lights. Kansas State didn't play bad for all but like 5, 6, 7 minutes of that game, where the atmosphere, the crowd all just got to them. They had turnovers after mistake, after mishap, after miscue, and things just snowballed and went south in a hurry. And so it's a tough place to play. And then Colorado being such a good team, it's going to be really tough. But yeah, I mean, KU, I think that obviously it's not a crazy take to say that turnovers and mistakes late in games, and also I guess late in halves for that matter, have held them back. But if you correct those, which are fixable mistakes, man, like KU, ESPN's FPI wasn't insane by having the Jayhawks as its preseason favorite, right? Like KU's shot itself in the foot. You correct those mistakes, they're still a good team. And so I think obviously KU's probably going to lose one, but Andy, you're not crazy. You could talk me into it.
Right. Like I said, I would not bet the mortgage, with Kansas making a bowl, but it's definitely not the longest odds of something that I've called here on the podcast before. So do with that what you will.
3 words. Provo at night. Okay. We wrap this show up the same way every single week. We look ahead to the weekend that is coming up, run through the list of games, and each of us will pick the game we think is the one to watch. And of course, you cannot pick your team. Oklahoma State's not playing this weekend, so I don't have to worry about that. Not that I would pick whatever game they're playing in anyway, or anybody would. But let's run down the slate. We got a Friday game. Love it, though it is Big 12 After Dark on a Friday. Arizona hosting Houston, 9:15 p.m. kickoff on FS1. All times here are Central Time, God's time. On Saturday, whole day of Big 12 football. We kick things off at 11 a.m. on Fox, the big noon kickoff. Colorado hosting Utah. Big noon kickoff will be there in Boulder. 3 o'clock on ESPN2. West Virginia hosting Baylor. Always a fun matchup. At 6 p.m. on ESPN, Kansas State hosting Arizona State. 7 p.m. on Fox, Iowa State hosting Cincinnati. And that game we just talked about, 9:15 p.m. God's time kickoff on ESPN in Provo. BYU hosting Kansas. Ryan is our guest. What's the game you are going to watch this weekend?
Yeah, I apologize. I kind of got ahead of myself on the last answer, but yeah, man, BYU, KU, that's going to be must-watch football. And, it means a lot for both programs in different ways. BYU's chasing a secured spot in the Big 12 and hoping to make some noise in the CFP, whereas KU, Lance Leipold's still got those guys bought in. It would be real easy for them to all hang up and just kind of check out of the season. But that is obviously not the case given what we saw on Saturday. And so KU's playing well. I just talked about them, and BYU's atmosphere at night, truly is second to none. Those fans are the nicest, people. Avery Johnson in a press conference after the game said that he heard fans cheering him on and encouraging him, like, keep your head up after they lost the game. He said he had never heard that in his life from an opposing fan base. So it's a different, it's a very different fan base, but it's still real raucous, loud. They're smart. They're not all drunk. They understand the rules, and so they're a smart fan base. And so it'll be a tough, challenging place to play. But anytime you can, let alone the game between the white lines versus KU and BYU, anytime you can get a chance to see a game in Provo on TV under the lights, man, like, absolutely, you've got to tune into that.
Got to get out to Provo. Just it's on the bucket list. Like, it's on the college football bucket list, especially with them at the Big 12.
Yeah, I wanted to get out there this year. Unfortunately, I wasn't able to make it happen, but it's going to happen.
Andy, what's your game?
Since I obviously can't pick that game, I'm gonna go ahead and return the favor to Ryan and say that Arizona State Kansas State game. That is a game that it's between two teams that are just slightly back in Big 12 conference race. Like I said, like we talked about earlier, it's two of the teams that are looking to try to move into that second spot. This is going to be a huge game for both of them. I don't know if Skattebo is going to be back. Like, I don't think they've officially ruled him out yet, but you have to wonder if he's going to be back for this game. He almost played in the game against UCF, and he was convinced by his coach to sit out to get back to 100%. So this is going to be an interesting game. How does Kansas State react off the bye? Can they, keep themselves on track for a date against Iowa State for a potential spot in Arlington It's a lot less clear now than it was, even just 2 weeks ago. So we'll be very interested to kind of see how all that works out.
For the sake of variety, because I think you guys picked great games, I'll take Iowa State versus Cincinnati. Iowa State at home, Cincinnati coming off of a bad game. Iowa State on basically a bad 3-game streak, even though they won one of them. They're already a 9-point favorite, but can Iowa State turn the ship around? You've lost 2 straight. The team doesn't look great on either side of the ball. Can you turn things around against the Cincinnati team that's at least plucky? They know that the schedule they've got in the final 3, they'd love to get to a bowl game this year and show progress. It's not a bad Cincinnati team. Can Iowa State get things turned back around? Can they right this ship and keep themselves in contention for Arlington? Or is this going to be kind of a really disappointing and lost season for Iowa State, which was just they had so much promise until the last few weeks? It is definitely one to keep an eye on, especially from the Iowa State side, as we keep track of the teams still in contention: BYU, Iowa State, Kansas State, Arizona State, and Colorado. So I think it's a really good slate that's 3 good games from 6 o'clock through midnight to keep an eye on in the Big 12. So no shot to Colorado, Utah, or Baylor, West Virginia. If you have to pick a part of the day where you're I'm going to get some things done so I can watch some games. If you're wanting to watch impactful Big 12 games, 6 o'clock, that's when you want to sit down and be able to flip back and forth between ESPN and Fox and then back to ESPN for the late night game. Though I'll say this, Houston, Arizona, we're on bowl watch for both those teams. We're on bowl watch for Houston. I think Houston if Houston wins at Arizona, as bad as Arizona has been, they'd be 1 win away, which would be incredible. And so I can't help but kind of hope it happens for Houston, that they reach a bowl this year. It would be wild and so very Big 12 and so very 2024 season for something like that to happen. It just would. It's a great season. We get one of these every once in a while where everything is just not the way it's supposed to be and not what we thought. And I love it. Absolutely love it. Speaking of things I love, Ryan, man, it's been too long. We will not go as long before we get you back on the show again. We just cannot. It's always a pleasure to see you and to chat with you and hear your thoughts. Where can everybody check out the work you do covering Kansas State, the Big 12, and college football as a whole?
Yeah, I appreciate you guys having me on. It has been a while, but hopefully we can, get to do this another time here pretty soon. But everything's up on gopowercat.com, free content. There's also VIP stuff for the subscribers. YouTube channel is also growing. We're approaching 15,000 up on the YouTube channel. Fitz has been harping on everybody, hit the subscribe button if they're not already. But yeah, it's obviously a great time with football, kind of the crunch time of the season here, but also with basketball tipping off as well.
If you love a lot of sports, now's the time to pay attention. This is the time of year to do it. Of course, Andy Mitz is the host of the Rock Chalk podcast. If you want to get your Kansas insights, Andy Mitz 12 on Twitter. We are 1012 Network on Twitter. And Blue Sky 1012 Pod on Instagram and Threads. Threads has been a bopping. It's been a hopping. Everyone's trying to move over there. Lots of people are moving over from Twitter to Threads and getting it going. So if you are someone who is doing that as well, we are on Threads and trying to keep it going. Wherever you listen to the show, leave us a positive review. We'd appreciate it. Again, 1012network.com, TEN12, the word network. It's where you can find every show. Go check them all out. We will be back to make picks this week. I'd tell you who our guest is, but if I do, then they'll cancel. So we'll just talk to y'all again then.
This podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.